In case you missed it, here's Dave and Cheryl's favorite moments of the week.
Well, if you have a dog, pay attention. We've got some stats and studies on dogs.
They analyzed a whole bunch of studies, and they found that growing up with a dog is good for a kid's health and happiness. People at the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, yes, it is a thing, they say scientists frequently examine how growing up with a dog can affect kids, and they kind of narrowed it down to a couple of different benefits.
Attachment to pets can promote healthy social development. Also, things like increased social interaction, improved communication, and play in kids.
Also, pets can be perceived as presenting their feelings authentically in the moment. And also, they can be more forgiving than humans.
Growing up with a dog or even other pets, they say, fosters care and responsibility. They also co-funded another big study where interactions with dogs, they found, can improve symptoms of stress in kids, too.
That's good. And finally, childhood pets are perceived to be non-judgmental, confidential, and accepting sources of support. I mean, there's been numerous studies that show like kids that have trouble reading, a lot of times, but they need to practice reading out loud. Mm-hmm. What they do is they have them read to a dog, because a dog doesn't care if you mess up, but they'll listen to you.
Always. I mean, the old dog that we had, he was so good. One of our kids had some struggles with mental health, things like that, and he was just there all the time. In fact, they would close the door to go to bed sometimes, and we would poof, knock the door open and go in anyway, right? And in hindsight, looking back, I know they've said that, you know, and not to beat around the bush, but that dog may have saved their life from being there as someone to listen all the time, right?
And I know this is about dogs, but I think the same could be said for any sort of pet that you have to look after. I mean, even cats, even though they can sometimes be antisocial and jerks, but, you know, when it comes down to it, they'll curl up with you and cuddle with you.
Well, there's been studies that show that petting an animal, dog, a cat especially, it lowers your anxiety levels too. So lots of benefits for having pets. And if you're looking to rescue a pet, country929.com, you can always check out the Pet of the Week from Pet and Wildlife Rescue and also CK Animal Rescue.
And now it's time for...
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's random.
Is that a fact?
Is that a fact?
4 random facts.
4 random facts about the Queen. Elizabeth was Queen for 70 years and 214 days, making her the longest reigning British monarch and the second longest reigning monarch of all time. Only Louis XIV of France outlasted her. He sat on the throne for 72 years and 110 days from 1643 to 1715, beginning when he was 5 years old.
And she was, 26 when she took over the crown? Did you know at the time of Elizabeth's death, at least 9 out of every 10 living human beings had never known a British monarch other than her?
What a wild stat. The Queen also ruled for so long that she made her eldest son, Charles, the longest-serving heir apparent in British history at 73 years old.
And I think you know this, the Queen famously loved corgis. She owned 30 of those dogs in her lifetime, dating back to her first corgi, which I believe her father gave her in 1933. Now, her last corgi died in 2018. She didn't want to breed any that would live on after she died, but she did move on. She got 2 dorgies. They are a crossbreed between a corgi and a dachshund that the Queen is apparently credited with inventing. I'd read a little bit more into it. Apparently, her corgi bred with her daughter's dachshund, and they came out so, it was accidental, but it was so cute that they were like, well, let's just keep doing this because they're adorable.
And I guess it's Prince Andrew that's going to be taking over and taking care of the dogs.
Because there's about 4 of them left. I believe there's 1 corgi, 2 dorgies, and like a cocker spaniel or something.
When I say taking over and taking care of them, one of his butlers, servants, whatever, will do. They'll be in his house. And by house, I mean giant castle. There's your 4 random facts.
Today's
1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
So random.
Random.
Give the public the facts.
4 random facts.
Yum. Science.
It's not rocket science. Check it out. I blinded us with science.
People in the Seattle area thought they were seeing steam venting from Mount Rainier, which is still an active volcano, but they haven't had a big eruption in about 500 years. But you never know. Well, experts confirmed it wasn't steam, though. It was just a cloud.
It just kind of looked like it was coming out of the mountain.
Which would make you think it could be happening.
If you've been feeling down or stressed out lately, science says you should try getting your hands dirty. Researchers at the University of Florida did a study, and they found that gardening helps to lower stress, anxiety, and depression. And even better, you don't have to have a green thumb to really reap the mental benefits. So they did the study where none of the participants had ever gardened before. 32 women between the ages of 26 and 49, all who had a history of having to take prescription medication for depression and anxiety. And they were assigned to either a twice-weekly gardening class or an art class. Now, the women in both groups enjoyed similar improvements in mental health, but the gardeners reported less anxiety.
There's just something pleasing about putting seeds in the ground and then reaping the benefits of that.
Although then, what is the stress, though, when it doesn't grow or it dies?
Well, that's why you got to put enough seeds in the ground. In space news, we found a planet only 100 light years away that could potentially sustain life. Now, that is 590 trillion miles, though.
Only 100 light years.
Only. And a new study found that even short amounts of time in space can be devastating on our bodies. Every blood sample from astronauts shows genetic mutations from radiation.
Ooh, that's not good.
We should be starting to isolate these astronauts, man. That's how the zombie apocalypse is going to start.
If you've been, trying to work out, getting in shape, well, apparently the answer to getting bigger muscles could be quantity over quality. This new study found that just a little bit of exercise each day is better for the body than one intense workout session a week. So researchers found that just by doing a handful of bicep curls every day, 5 days a week, does more to improve your muscle strength than just continuously doing dozens of curls in a longer exercise routine that's done just once a week. And even better, you don't have to work out at full intensity to achieve the results. They say that a very manageable amount of exercise on a regular basis will produce noticeable improvements in strength.
Something to be said for even just a little bit every day.
So grab those hand weights, start doing those curls.
Start bumping. Let's get physical. In health news, this is something pretty amazing. Something that could restore sight for up to 13 million who have gone blind due to diseased corneas. Researchers have developed an implant made of collagen protein from pig skin and restored vision to 20 people so far.
Wow.
The promising result of the trial brings hope, of course, to all those that have been suffering through all of this sort of thing. So pretty impressive. One of the researchers said the results show that it is possible to develop a biomaterial that meets all the criteria for being used as human implants, which can then be mass produced and stored for up to 2 years and be able to help more people. This could be a miracle. We've got a couple of law and disorder stories for you, and this first one is wild.
A 30-year-old woman over in Spain sent her mother a terrifying video of herself being held hostage. She was blindfolded, someone was holding a knife to her throat, and there was blood coming out of her mouth, except it was all fake. Even the blood. Apparently, the woman and 4 accomplices were arrested for trying to extort $50,000 from the woman's mom.
The mother did pay, but somehow the authorities got wind of it, started investigating, and here's the wild part even more. They found that the woman had already conned her mother 3 other times in similar schemes.
It makes me wonder if they've now put sort of like something on her bank account to let the bank officials know whenever she does a big transfer like this.
That is
maybe you should investigate.
Unreal. Those 3 times she got a total of $45,000. When police found her, she and her accomplices were living it up at a casino. Wow. There are times when people talk about, disowning family members. This case, that'd be a good case.
Yeah, well, especially if she's going to jail now, I would assume.
Wow.
How about this one? 2 employees of a Wendy's restaurant recently didn't want to go to work in Pennsylvania, so they came up with a pretty sophisticated plan to try to make sure that they had an easy shift. So, still have to go to work, still get paid, but you wouldn't be very busy. They pulled over at a railroad crossing near the restaurant and put a device on the tracks that made the wooden railroad crossing arms malfunction.
While they were driving through here, she dropped him off. He exited the vehicle. He placed a shunt on the track. He got back in the car with her, and they proceeded to Wendy's. During the interview, they told us that their intentions were that if the gates could malfunction and they could somehow block traffic, then that would prevent people from being able to get to Wendy's, and they could have a slow night at work.
But they didn't just malfunction. They disabled the arms completely. So someone could have driven over the tracks with no idea a train was coming. But luckily, it didn't happen. And it was all just because they didn't want to go to work.
Well, they wanted to work. They just didn't want to work that hard. As you can imagine, they're facing multiple charges.
Now, it's time to put some good in your morning. The good news brought to you by Almar Home Improvements. 519-351-5666.
And Walter's not just your typical 9-year-old lab retriever.
No, he was surrendered to a rescue near Moncton, New Brunswick last year. And when he was surrendered, he had been, loved a little bit too much as he weighed more than 150 pounds and struggled to even walk.
Wow, I can't even kind of imagine that. That is just massive.
Huge. So April, a dog trainer from the area, agreed to foster Walter and try to get him to, slim down, lose some weight so that he'd be more comfortable. Because, of course, a 9-year-old lab retriever weighing more than 150 pounds, I can only imagine the toll that it was having on his health.
And it's not something you can do quickly either. You've got to do a really slow shed of weight. So they started slow, a little bit of exercise, changed his food to a lower calorie option. That seemed to help quite a bit too. Walter was always willing to hit the road for a walk every time April grabbed the leash. But his favorite activities were actually going into the ocean out east, swimming and running on the beach. That's all of our favorite activities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 1 year, Walter has lost more than 60 pounds.
Unbelievable.
60
That's
pounds.
wonderful.
And his overall health has also greatly improved. But I think the best news about all of this is that April and her family decided they couldn't imagine life without Walter in it. So they've officially adopted him.
That's more than a third of his overall starting weight that he got rid of, which is incredible. So great story, again, out of Moncton, New Brunswick. Walter, our good news story this morning for Wednesday with Almar.
Was there a toy you really played with a lot?
I remember I had Barbies, of course, growing up. I was really big into puzzles, though. I'm trying to think what else.
I had tabletop hockey, which I absolutely loved. I don't know if that's in the Toy Hall of Fame, but the latest additions have been announced as the nominees are now out.
12 finalists were just announced for favorite childhood toy. Finalists include Bingo, although I guess that could also be an adult game. Briar Horses, not sure what those are. Light Bright, ooh, fan of Light Bright. Catan or Settlers of Catan, Masters of the Universe, Nerf Toys, The Pinata, Phase 10, Pound Puppies, Racco, one of my favorite games ever, and the Spirograph and the Top.
The Spirograph. My sister had one and I wasn't allowed to touch it.
Oh,
I would probably break it.
I had one and I loved it.
I thought it was the greatest thing. I would watch her go around and around with that thing. It was so cool. So out of those, who do you think deserves to get in? So because only a few of them will be announced in, right? 3 of the 12 will end up going into the Hall of Fame.
Well, personally, Light Bright.
Yes.
Like the ones that I loved. Racco, it's a card game that, I don't know, one of my friends had it and we started playing it at the cottage one year, like I think when I was in high school. Love that game. And it's probably Spirograph.
I would go with Light Bright, Spirograph, and Nerf Toys. Although Nerf Toys have gotten to where they're not so soft anymore.
Oh, no.
Kids, grandkids, and they hit you. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, my nephews have a ton of Nerf guns. And there's these ones that have they're like bigger bullets. And I think, did they get them for Christmas? And we shot one and it was like, but it was zinging across the room and I think it hit the window. We were all just like, okay, so we're going to hide that one.
The window starts rattling.
Yeah, because it was like, if you get hit with that.
Yeah, it's as much about
it's going to leave a welt.
It's what's propelling it, right? These air gun things that they use now are so much more powerful.
And some of them have batteries, so you can do multi-firing, like it's a machine gun. They're crazy.
So, by the way, they'll all be announced November 10th, the newest additions to the Toy Hall of Fame. Catan was nominated last year along with Masters of the Universe and the Pinata, but they didn't make the cut. The 3 that did make it last year were American Girl Dolls, Risk, and Sand.
Is the stick already in the Toy Hall of Fame?
I think it is. So, yes, you had to have the stick to go along with the sand.
Well, a stick can be so many. It can be a gun. It can be a sword. It can be jousting.
I love imagination. Last summer when we had the grandkids down for a week, I took them over to Tecumseh Public School. We were out for a walk with the dog, and they wanted to play on the various things that are on the track there. And then we came around, and they were playing a bit on some of the other things that were there in the schoolyard. And then the next thing you know, they were sitting there in the dirt, and they had made up this whole thing with some rocks, and they had roads, and I love that. I love seeing that imagination, right? That it doesn't necessarily have to involve a television and a video game.
How did you know?
I know, it was amazing.
I just happen to know, that's all.
No, yes, I don't know.
You know, these aren't jokes, these are thoughts. These are things that make you go,
90% of us no longer answer the phone when it's an unknown number.
Well, I don't want to talk to strangers. I don't even want to talk to people I know on the phone.
You know,
someone I don't.
All the scammers, I think, have gotten us to that point. Plus, you know, you think of how we were raised. I was raised with 4 siblings. The phone would ring. We'd all go running for that wall phone trying to answer it. Now the phone rings. You're like, who's calling me?
Who's calling me? Why are you calling me? Why aren't you texting me instead? Hey, 83% of people say if they won the lottery, they'd keep it a secret.
We got to try and keep it a secret at least a little bit till you get some plans in place.
You'd keep it a secret, but there would be signs.
Yeah. Quitting your job might be the first one. 75% of women think that men over the age of 35 look ridiculous when they wear a hat backwards.
I mean, unless you're a baseball catcher or, I don't know.
I'll say this. When I went to the Jays game, I didn't even think about sunscreen. So my neck was burning at one point, and then I saw a young guy a couple rows down from me with his hat on backwards, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant. Then I had a little bit of shade on my neck. So there was some effectiveness to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that case, that was more for...
practicality.
Exactly. Hey, 69% of adults say they feel judged by their partner for their snacking habits.
Into the bonbons again, are we? 61% of couples have argued about whether or not to rinse the dishes before putting them in the dishwasher.
What camp are you in?
No rinse.
No rinse?
No, because we had that story about new dishwashers. If you rinse the dishes too much, the sensors don't work properly.
Yeah, because they have these fancy sensors in them that detect just how dirty they are. But then you don't want too much stuff on there because then it'll wash off and it'll like jam up the filters.
So I guess I'm in the semi-rinse. If there's too much stuff.
If it's really bad, yeah, it's caked on there. Have you ever done this, Dave? 31% of guys say they've borrowed deodorant from their partner.
No. I just never I've never thought about that.
You haven't forgotten deodorant and like you're at a resort and you're like, oh no, what do I do? I ran out.
No, but I have forgotten to put some on at work, but I always have kept a small little travel one in my bag.
Of course you do.
We all do it. Like you do the elbow thing, you bring your nose down.
Well, because it's such a part of your morning routine that I've done that before I get to work and I'm like,
Did I
put deodorant on?
Didn't I?
Did I brush my teeth? Because it's just such a part of your routine and it's over so quick. You're like, did I do it?
Well, you get into a zone. Like the time I opened the garage door to take the garbage out, backed out and drove off and like, did I close the garage door? Did a U-turn, came back, drove right by my house again and didn't look. I was like, are you kidding me? I had to drive back again. For the record, I closed the door.
Sounds about right.
And 4% of us are afraid to ride in an elevator.
Well, after the story we had earlier this week of actress Anna Kendrick, she's in Toronto for the film festival there. They got stuck in the elevator and they actually had to lower a ladder through the escape hatch on top.
Now, there was some pretty good-looking firefighters that rescued her there, so,
Oh, there's some people trying to get stuck in elevators.
It's Dave and Cheryl. Did you know there's several things that shouldn't be on your resume as of this year, or at least, in this day and age? A senior recruiter at Google going viral after she posted 5 things that you should probably take off your resume if they're still there.
And in case you're wondering, well, what are they? Well, don't worry. We're about to tell you. First one, your full address. They say there's just no need for it anymore. Just city and province or city and state is fine.
Also, an objective statement. People used to include a few lines at the top of your resume about why you might be a good fit for that job or company, but they said it's kind of old school now.
Also, you don't need to include your entire work history on your resume. Just list the experience that is relevant to the job you're applying for.
And part of the reason for that is they said if you're listing everything back to when you started in 1990, people could judge you and then think, oh, well, they're too old for this position. We don't want to hire them. Also, weak verbs and statements like I helped or I was partially responsible for. Stronger action verbs make you sound more impressive, like I managed, I improved, I generated, or I streamlined.
So they say just look at your resume and, look at a thesaurus and try to find up some different action verbs instead.
And take ownership for some of the things you have accomplished.
And finally, the last thing you don't need on your resume anymore in 2022, references available upon request. They say it's just filler. If they really want to talk to your references, they will ask you no matter what.
And as someone that's been in the position of hiring in different places I've worked in, I will say this, tighten up your resume. Because when you get a resume that comes in and it's 2 and 3 pages long and it just, you're scrolling and scrolling, it's like, no, tighten it up. give the pertinent information and the most important stuff.
Yeah, and in order to get it down to, maybe one page or 2 pages, don't be putting it into tiny little font either.
Yeah, that too.
Make it readable.
You've been listening to Dave and Cheryl's favorite moments of the week.